I grew up on a border. Not the kind you find on maps, though it was that too, but the kind where the living and the dead shared the same ground, and everyone knew it. Nobody talked about it much. There was an old man at my school. He had one eye. He had survived the Khmer Rouge. And on nights when the power went out, the teachers would gather around a small canteen lit only by oil lamps. That was when he told stories. Not ghost stories, at least, he never called them that. He called them things he had seen. This is one of them. I was 8 years old when it happened, and more than 20 years later, I still remember the morning baby V started crying. It was 4:50 in the morning. The school grounds were still dark. The jungle was still. Even the insects had gone quiet. That particular silence that settles over a border village in the hour before dawn, when the world holds its breath. Then, the crying started. Not the ordinary crying of a hungry child or a child waking from a dream. This was different. Sustained, desperate. The kind of sound that pulls adults out of sleep before they are fully conscious, already moving toward the door. Baby V had a fever. It had come on suddenly in the night with no warning. Her temperature was climbing fast. The teachers mobilized immediately. Someone went for the vehicle. Someone woke the man who kept the keys to the gate. By 5:15, she was on the road to the hospital. And later that morning, when the danger had passed, when the worst of it was over, the old man at the canteen said something that no one in that compound ever forgot. He said, "I knew this would happen. I saw her last night." The night before, the power had gone out across the entire commune. This was not unusual. The electricity in Quoc Thai, a small border commune in the far southwest of Vietnam, was unreliable at the best of times. When it cut, the teachers gathered at the canteen run by an old man everyone called Ong Tam and his wife. Lamplight, warm drinks, conversation. It was how evenings passed when the dark came early and there was nowhere else to go. That night, near 10 o'clock, Ong Tam paused mid-conversation. He looked toward the far end of the compound, toward the small house that had recently been built behind the chemistry lab, where a young couple had just been assigned to teach. They had a baby daughter, 6 months old. He said, "Tomorrow morning, prepare a vehicle. Ask Hai to open the gate early. You will need to take little V to the hospital." The room went still. Someone asked how he knew. Someone asked what he had seen. Someone asked whether V was already unwell, whether her parents had said something. He shook his head. "I cannot explain it tonight," he said. "If I say it now, out loud, it will make things worse for the child. Come to me in the morning. I will go to the house and do what needs to be done." No one pressed him further. With Ong Tam, you learned not to. Everyone went to bed. No one slept well. After V was taken to the hospital and the immediate fear had passed, the teachers gathered for breakfast. They looked at Ong Tam, and they waited. He told them what he had seen. The previous night, sometime after the gathering broke up and the compound fell quiet, he had been awake. The way old men in places like this are often awake at night, watchful, without entirely knowing why. And he had seen something moving across the school grounds, a white shape. It came down from the silk cotton tree at the far edge of the property. It moved toward the small house behind the chemistry lab, the house where V slept, and it stood at the front door. It did not enter. It just stood there. It moved strangely, he said, gesturing in a way that was difficult to describe. Erratic, like someone expressing something they could not put into words. Then, it returned the way it had come, rising back toward the tree and disappearing into its branches. "I knew then that it had touched the child," he said. "Newborn children have weak spiritual protection. Their souls have not yet fully settled into the living world. That makes them visible to things that move in the dark. That makes them reachable." He looked at the faces around him. "But I need to tell you something first," he said. "Before I explain what that was, you need to understand what that tree is. And to understand the tree, you need to understand what this land is." My parents came to Quoc Thai in 1993. They were young teachers, fresh from university, assigned by the education department to a school on the border. They came with their bags and their lesson plans, and they knew almost nothing about where they were going. The school had been built in 1991. It was built on a mass grave. I do not say that to shock you. I say it because it is true, and because in a place like Quoc Thai, such things are known and mostly not spoken of, the way you know the shape of a scar without needing to describe it. The land had been a cemetery before the school, and before it was a cemetery, the Khmer Rouge had moved through here. Pol Pot's forces pushing deep into the Vietnamese border villages in the late 1970s, killing without system or reason, leaving bodies in fields and along roads and in the soil of places that would later become schoolyards. The bones were there, beneath the classrooms, beneath the courtyard. They had not gone anywhere. For the first few years, nothing happened. The teachers came, the children came, the school ran. But by 1995, things began to change. Teachers arrived one Monday to find their classrooms rearranged, desks overturned, chairs stacked against walls, as if something had moved through the rooms in the night. The bathrooms ran water at all hours, the taps turning themselves. At night, crying, formless, sourceless, drifted across the compound. Sometimes it sounded like a woman, sometimes like children. The teachers pooled their money. They performed ceremonies for the souls of the land. Offerings, incense, acknowledgement. It quieted for a while, until the year 2000, when the floods came. The worst floods in the history of the region. The ground shifted, and everything that had been quiet began to stir again. But that comes later. First, the tree. In my home region, we measure the kaigon, the silk cotton trees, by tiers. Each branching fork in the upper canopy counts as one tier. The more tiers, the older the tree. The older the tree, the more spirits are said to have made it their home, nesting in the hollows and the high branches, watching the land below. This tree had 7 tiers. Its trunk required 2 adults with arms fully outstretched to encircle. It had stood on that land before the school was built, before the graves were dug, before the Khmer Rouge came and left, and the silence settled over everything. It had outlasted all of it, and it had not always stood there alone. Before the school was built, before the graves, before much of anything, a young woman was found hanging from this tree. She was approximately 23 years old. She was not from the village. No one knew her name. No one knew where she had come from, or what had brought her to this particular tree in this particular place, or what had led her to the decision she made. She was found 2 days after she died. The smell announced her before anyone looked up. Ong Tam was the first to reach her. He told me what he saw once when I was old enough to hear it and young enough to still remember every word. I will tell you now as plainly as he told me. She was hanging, rigid. The body moved with the wind. Her face had gone completely white. Her eyes were open and fixed on something distant, something no living person could locate. Her tongue had extended past her chin. He did not run. He called others. They brought her down together. It was Ong Tam who prepared her body for burial. He had learned, somewhere in his long life on the border, how these things are done. He took a chopstick made of ivory, always ivory, he specified, and used it to carefully wind her tongue back into her mouth. Then, he tried to close her eyes. They would not close. He pressed them gently, and they opened again. He tried again. They opened again. The eyelids would not hold. He said this meant she had died with something unresolved, something still fastening her to the world she was trying to leave. He lit incense. He spoke to her quietly. He asked her, in the way you ask rather than command, to rest. After some time, her eyes closed on their own. She was buried near the roots of the tree she had chosen. It seemed the only right thing. A small shrine was built at the base of the tree. On the 13th of each month, the villagers came with offerings, food, and incense, and flowers. They did not know her name. They knew only that she had been a person, that she had suffered, that she deserved to be remembered by someone. For years this continued. Then, the Khmer Rouge came. Pol Pot's forces moved through the border region in the late 1970s. They destroyed what they found: buildings, shrines, records, the small accumulations of village life. The shrine at the base of the tree was gone. The monthly offerings stopped. The story of the girl who had no name faded into the larger silence that follows every war. There is only so much grief that people can hold. Eventually, something has to be released. And the stories of strangers are usually the first to go. She was forgotten. The tree remained, larger now, more tears. In 2000, the floods came. The worst floods anyone in the region had ever seen. Water rose into the school buildings. The courtyard became a lake. The graves beneath the compound shifted, the way ground shifts when the water moves through it, unsettling what has been settled, bringing old things to the surface. Something changed after that. The white shape was seen again. Figures moving near the tree after dark. The crying at night returned, that formless, sourceless sound drifting across the compound. And the spirit, whoever she was, wherever she had been in those years of forgetting, had come back to the tree that held her bones beneath its roots. She had come back, and she was not at rest. Ong Tam explained it this way: a child of 6 months has not yet fully arrived in the living world. Their soul is still settling, still finding its shape, still learning the boundaries between what is here and what is not. The old people call this Via Eo, a weak life force, thin as morning fog, easily disturbed. To something moving in the night, a child like this shines differently than an adult. The barriers are thinner, the distance shorter. The spirit had been circling the compound for weeks. She had no particular malice. Ong Tam was careful to say this. She was lost and unacknowledged and looking, perhaps, for something she could not name. And the brightest, most reachable presence on those grounds was a 6-month-old girl, sleeping 200 meters from the tree. It was not cruelty, it was proximity, which did not make it acceptable. That afternoon, Ong Tam went to the house. I followed him. I was a child, terrified and curious, in the way only children can be terrified and curious simultaneously. He looked at me and said, "Why do you follow an old man into something that frightens you?" I said I wanted to see. He removed something from his pocket, a cord woven from 3 threads, red, yellow, and orange, with a small talisman attached. Characters written in red ink, curling and dense, like a script made from a living thing. He tied it around my wrist. "So the dreams don't come tonight," he said. Then, he began. He walked the perimeter of the house 3 times clockwise, then twice counterclockwise, burning incense and speaking words I could not understand. Not Vietnamese, something older, something specific to this kind of work. At each corner of the house, he pressed a bamboo stake into the earth, each one carved with the same markings as my talisman. Beside each stake, he buried a handful of coarse salt. From his bag, he produced a small bagua mirror, 8-sided, hand-painted, the kind used to deflect what should not enter, and hung it above the front door. 2 paper talismans were pressed flat against the base of the door frame. Beside the window, a small wooden stand was hung, with another talisman attached. When everything was in place, he set up a small altar and began to pray. The flame on the incense burner flared upward, suddenly, without a breath of wind, and then it burned down steadily to ash. Ong Tam said nothing about this. He packed his bag and went home. 3 days later, baby Vi came home from the hospital. Her mother stopped at the canteen. Ong Tam told her to make offerings around the perimeter of the house and to bring home an image of Quan Am, the bodhisattva of compassion, and keep it on the altar inside. That evening, the power was out again. The teachers gathered as they always did. Ong Tam sat quietly for a while. Then he looked toward the house behind the chemistry lab, toward the silk cotton tree standing beyond it in the fading evening light. He said, "She came again last night." No one spoke. She flew down from the tree. She came to the house. She approached the door. He paused. She could not enter. She tried again. She circled, up and down, back and forth, looking in through the window, looking in through the door. Every time she came close, something pushed her back. He picked up his cup. "She will keep coming," he said, "but she will not get in." Baby Vi grew up healthy. I left Quoc Thai when I was older. I left the border, and the school, and the compound where I had grown up watching the adults try to make sense of what moved through the dark around them. I built a life somewhere else, as children eventually do. But there are things you carry with you. I carry the image of Ong Tam tying that cord around my wrist, 3 threads, red and yellow and orange, and saying, "So the dreams don't come," with the matter-of-fact calm of someone handing you an umbrella before the rain. I carry the image of that small house with its bamboo stakes at the corners and its bagua mirror above the door, and the tree 200 meters away with 7 tiers and something restless living in its branches. I carry the image of a young woman whose name no one ever knew, buried beneath the roots of a tree she had chosen, forgotten when the war came, remembered briefly each month on the 13th, with offerings from people who knew nothing about her except that she had been here, and she had suffered, and she deserved not to be entirely alone. There is a phrase Ong Tam used to end his stories. "Go thơ, go thiêng." If you honour them, they watch over you. He was not a frightening man. He was a careful one. He understood something that most of us spend our lives trying not to think about, that the dead do not disappear. They go somewhere, and whether we acknowledge them, whether we leave offerings, whether we remember their names, matters in ways we cannot fully measure. I do not know if the spirit of that young woman has found rest. I do not know if she is still in that tree, or if she has moved on, or if the monthly offerings ever resumed after the war. I do not know if anyone, in the years since, has learned her name. I know only that on the 13th of each month, somewhere in me, I remember her. And I hope, wherever she is, that someone else does too. She will keep coming, but she will not get in.